Tell you, kid, it's pretty simple. Some of us prefer avoiding a fight if we can talk our way out of it. That's it.
But it is so much simpler to demonstrate strength through force.
Oh, you. Don't ever change, Andreja.
city. New Atlantis. My doing. Years of coordination between my associate and I. Figuring out how to deploy the Lazarus plant's pollen outside of Londinian. Learning to synthesize it. Use it as a weapon. Now, being as clever as you are, I'm sure you have thoughts on why I might do such a thing. All in due time. First, I want to see if you're truly as astute as you appear. So why would someone like me go through all this trouble? Oh, my revenge was far from petty, Captain. The attacks were a correction. When I discovered the plant, I did consider handing over what I'd found, but we were at war. And I couldn't risk information that dangerous falling into the wrong hands. So I ordered the bombing of the Londinian spaceport, fixing two problems at once. Halting the spread of the city's terramorph outbreak, and sealing away knowledge of the plant's potential. Of the colony war, Captain. The Freestar Collective had spies everywhere. I was concerned that if word got out, the Collective could swoop down, start breeding Lazarus plants, and overrun our worlds with waves of terramorphs. Just like what was happening on Londinian at that very moment. Sealing off the city to prevent mass death, it was the only option that made sense at the time. Easy to say now, but in that moment, I wasn't about to add another dangerous variable to an already catastrophic war. But then, as the war ended, my trial, my execution, I made a decision. After all, I'd given everything for the colonies. My life as I knew it included. And what did I get in return? Was there any effort by the UC to protect my legacy? My daughter's legacy? No. We were sacrificed when all we did was serve. So I kept what I'd learned and arranged the attacks to set things right again. My daughter, she becomes a hero. I become a trusted advisor, having found Kaiser, the research team, and cement my new position of influence when I hand them the name of the person responsible for the attack on New Atlantis. The dear departed Dr. Reginald Orlays, the associate who aided me all these years, and whom I always slated to take the fall. What luck he was stopped dead before he could hurt anyone else. His decades on the run brought to an end by another unlikely hero. You. Can't remember the many lives you've taken. Orlays was the man whose death you brought about around the moon of Etheria, the pilot of the Warlock, the man I had to eliminate, to hide my secret. It wasn't easy. But the beauty of being loathed is that people will do whatever they can not to deal with you. They wanted to pretend I didn't exist. And so I used their blind eye to my advantage. Still, establishing a back channel to Orlays via the UC recovery teams was painstaking work. I've led campaigns less nerve-wracking. They believed they were luring in wanted criminals, but were in fact delivering precisely encoded slates, filled with instructions invisible to any but their recipient, dropped off at just the right moments to fall into the proper hands. All without the UC realizing whom you're actually dealing with. Slow work. But as you can see, ultimately effective. Why would I want to be in the good graces of the people who control my very life? I don't know, Captain. Maybe I still dream of a life outside these walls someday. A new face would be needed, of course, but it wasn't an impossibility. Though now, I'm not so sure. There are no heroes without a villain. I simply arranged the opportunity for us to overcome one and become the other. And we all benefited. It's why I had Orlays reprogram Kaiser. Had that old machine guide you to where I found the plant all those years ago. I went to great lengths to ensure your and Hadrian's success. And look at the results. I know for a fact the Cabinet's planning to honor both you and Hadrian once this is all done. Isn't that preferable to languishing away in obscurity? Running jobs on the tail end of nowhere for the Vanguard? With only the vague hopes of perhaps earning the right to buy a home in the well someday. Something befitting the dedication to the colonies you two have shown. While of course they can't give you a command, responsibility like that has to be earned. The Cabinet does have access to considerable resources. I expect you'll be quite pleased with the result, and none of it would have happened without my intervention. I'm simply looking for you to acknowledge the truth. And let's not forget the importance of our actual endgame. Eliminating the terramorphs. Securing knowledge of the Lazarus plant. What we've set in motion is going to protect thousands, maybe millions of lives. I'm simply requesting one more life be protected. Mine. I've already sent along the evidence of Orlays' role in the attacks to the Cabinet, leaving out my own involvement. All I ask is that you confirm as much to the Cabinet. Tell them that it was Orlays and Orlays alone. After all, I do still have a long list of threats to the UC. This needn't be the end of our good works together. Hunting down criminals and other threats to the United Colonies. I expect they'll give me a bit more free range once this is all over. You would help me, like you did with Orlays. Track them down and keep them from doing harm to the United Colonies. Impossible, though, if the Cabinet learns I'm the one responsible for the attacks. And how many have you killed to get where you are now? There are no great works that don't cost lives, Captain. Whether it's winning a war or digging a tram tunnel. So we sacrificed a few dozen in the attacks to possibly protect millions. That seems like a fair exchange to me. I only hope you'll see the same and leave my name out of the discussions to come. perspective in mind, Captain. We've done something great here. Let's not squander the opportunity to do more. One detail unaccounted for. And look what happens. I'll tell you why. Because the UC was, and is, full of people unwilling to pay the price required for victory. In the last days of the war, the UC was on the precipice of executing a final great assault on the Freestar Collective home system of Cheyenne. A massive strike, capable of obliterating Freestar Central Command and ending the conflict at long last. But just before we could launch the strike, word came from Londinium. The Terramorph outbreak had begun. I went to the city to assess the state of things, and discovered the Lazarus plant. We couldn't spare ships for a proper quarantine, so it was my decision to destroy the spaceport and seal off the city. Deal with it quickly, so we could get back to winning the war. I had a single ship. What would you have had me do? Ask them and the Terramorphs to form a line, and the UC fleet was spread thin already. No, I touched down, assessed the situation, made a decision, and returned to the task at hand. Very well. So upon my return from Londinian, we proceeded with our killing blow. Initially, we had great success against the mess the Freestar Collective called a Navy. But then the Freestar citizenry decided to get involved. Dozens of civilian ships jumping in to shield their military counterparts. I, of course, had no trouble firing on what should have been designated enemy vessels, but my peers had lost the stomach for it. So many lives lost already, they wailed. So the great UC Navy was routed by a mob. They picked our ships apart. The UC surrendered not long after, and thus rang the death knell for the great UC. You're welcome to whatever opinions you'd like. But had I been listened to, you have my word, we both wouldn't be sitting here. What lost the UC the war was cowardice. Once we'd cracked synthesizing the Lazarus plant's pollen, research that took years in and of itself, the attacks were exceedingly simple. Orlaze's ship would land on our target, bearing a few heat leeches, nothing that would raise suspicion. Then Lazarus pollen was pumped out of the ship during liftoff from the planet's surface. Shortly thereafter, an attack. A strike perpetrated in mere moments, with no one being the wiser. Which is why the work you and Hadrian are doing now, the work I've put into motion, is so critical. Why, that's the very problem. Harvesting the pollen directly is impossible. Too fragile to leave Londinian's atmosphere. But, with sufficient time and resources, a large entity like the UC or Freestar Collective could learn to synthesize the pollen, turning the Lazarus plant into a bioweapon unlike anything the galaxy has ever seen. Thus why the Terramorphs need to be dealt with. It wasn't solely for the benefit of the Sanan name that I organized the attacks. Our work will protect many lives. We were in the middle of an all-out war, Captain. Committing ships to save the city would have left another undefended, which sacrificed. Sidonia, Gagarin, New Atlantis. And if anyone else had learned about the Lazarus plant, well, the risk was too great. I weighed the options and made the call. Something amiss, Captain?
Perfect timing. We just got in. So on our end, good news. The microbe and the acyles are both as effective against heat leeches as they are against terramorphs.
Means either plan should work for clearing those critters off our worlds.
Considering what the Lazarus plant is capable of, I don't think we can deal with those things fast enough. I already sent along info to the cabinet to get them up to speed. So what about your end? Did you find anything? Did my father tell you what he knew about the Lazarus plant?
Orlays? Reginald Orlays? He did this? I didn't think he was still alive. You're sure it was him? Oh yeah. Both worked for UC Defense Research way back when. Different departments, but everyone knew Orlays. Had a mean eye for weapons tech. And a meaner temper. Wasn't exactly a surprise when he fled instead of standing trial after the Colony War. But finding out he's taken up mass murder in the years since, that is a shock. You're sure about this? Didn't say that. Just surprised to find out my former colleague is now dropping alien predators into unsuspecting cities. Just want to make sure we've got the right man. You're certain?
That's some impressive work. So then give us the rundown. Where's Orlays now? Were you able to bring him in? Oh, Captain, I'm sorry. I won't pry any further. Well, at least you won't be able to hurt anybody else now. Might be the best we could ask for, given the circumstances. So I guess there's nothing else to do but get this all in front of the cabinet. Unless there were other things we needed to discuss. This might be our last opportunity to talk things through before the cabinet weighs in on a decision regarding the terramorphs. Acyles aren't hostile to humans, but they are megafauna. If someone decides to pick a fight with one, it could get ugly. But they've already been spread far and wide once before when the UC was raising them as livestock, so the risk of introducing them to new worlds is minimal. Using them to clean up the terramorphs and leeches, though, it's not going to be nearly as expedient as the microbe would be. Given what we know now about the Lazarus plant, the speed of the job does matter. But going with the Asylees, we're at least dealing with known risks.
Microbe is going to make the cleanup a whole lot quicker. If we're concerned about this Lazarus plant getting deployed again, that's the way to go.
The cabinet can secure the Lazarus plant, and then we're not risking any surprises when it comes to dealing with a microbe.
You're being paranoid. You know the science. You know we can make this safe.
I do know the science. I also know math, and a 1 in a million chance of a mutation isn't 0. So I guess we're still in discussion. Probably best at this point to let the cabinet weigh in, see if they have a preference. They are.
Microbe needed minimal adjustment to account for heat leech anatomy.
And the Asylees seem like they're even better at tracking leeches than morphs.
Hell of a sight to watch, though, when they catch them. Like an open airlock guzzling angry spaghetti.
And here we go.
Welcome back, all of you. I wish we were meeting under better circumstances. But according to Hadrian's report and the second one I just received, it seems the Terramorph attack on New Atlantis was no random occurrence, but a planned strike. Is what I'm reading here true? This report comes from a particularly confidential source both you and I are familiar with, yes. Among the reasons its findings are so alarming. Now, is it true? Was the attack on New Atlantis planned? The second report claims to know the perpetrator as well. Did Reginald Orlais actually commit these attacks, Captain?
That appears to be the case, ma'am. The captain tracked that information down just after our trip to Londinian.
Reginald Orlais? Wasn't there a report he'd been killed recently?
Body was found floating around Etheria. Report mentioned you were sent to try and bring him in, Captain. I guess that didn't go according to plan.
Ah, yes. I was told about your mission and who ordered it. Did you two suspect at the time Orlais might have been involved in the attacks? Only that it would have been preferable if you'd managed to find him before he murdered UC citizens. Now, are you going to answer the question for me or not? Did you already suspect Orlais? Well, it appears you were ahead of the curve. This report contains definitive evidence Orlais triggered the attacks via this Lazarus plant the captain and Major Sanan uncovered.
Simply harrowing.
Indeed. Though it would have been preferable for him to have finally faced the UC's justice, it seems both of you are to be commended for ensuring he was dealt with before he could strike again. You have our thanks. Now, with our villain unmasked, we can attend to the other matters at hand. With the threads you've brought together here, the Lazarus plant, the attacks, the heat leeches, the three of you have likely spared thousands of lives. But it now falls to the cabinet to ensure this can never happen again. As such, the cabinet will be securing the Lazarus plant on Londinian. All materials related to the plant will be classified to ensure no one else learns its true nature.
A sound decision, Madam President.
Well, luckily the natural hostility of Londinian makes keeping out trespassers relatively easy. But we'll ensure its growth is contained, that access to the plant is only permitted via highly regulated clearances, and that our troop presence on Londinian is increased.
Tell the Freestar Collective. Wow. So they have another tool to utilize against us?
I'm in agreement. I fail to see the value here.
That is an interesting idea. A grand gesture to further display this cabinet doesn't think like those of the past.
The observers on Mars have proven such a gesture can bear fruit.
So, you want us to make nice with the Collective by sharing our state secrets?
No, I want us to display plainly the UC's actual intentions, that the plant will never be used as a weapon again.
That does sound worthwhile, Chief Kulkarni. Very well. We'll get the Collective involved in the management. Thank you for the suggestion, Captain. So then, to our final topic. The Cabinet has agreed to implement a plan that will deal with the Terramorph, and now also Heat Leech presence on human worlds. In fact, we've already begun enacting measures to check all UC ports and settlements for undiscovered nests. But we all understand this is only a partial solution. The project we're embarking on will be a long and difficult one. So our first step must be deciding how exactly this all will be handled.
Madam President, this microbe is clearly too much of a risk. The Aseles are the safer approach.
To someone with limited knowledge of biology, perhaps. The technology behind the microbe is solved science, Madam President. It isn't dangerous.
Using it to wipe out the Terramorphs would be the quickest path to protecting humanity.
And fast results always lead to the best outcomes, don't they?
As you can see, there remains debate among the Cabinet. We were hoping your group might issue a recommendation. Major?
We've been having similar debates ourselves, but the Captain has yet to weigh in.
I see. Captain, I know this may not be your area of expertise, but we'd like to know your take on the matter. I believe we have a responsibility to do something, yes. Heavens forbid, years from now, someone reopens the Pandora's box that Orle's discovered. It falls to us to enact every measure required to ensure that day never comes. Please, ask.
I can feel this one. While intimidating creatures, certainly, Aseles are docile unless provoked. They're honestly closer to oversized mobile scanners than deadly predators.
The concern is that, while all proposed methods will be long-term efforts, the Aseles are the slowest. Slow to breed, slow to deploy. We do everything we could to accelerate that process, including mustering some of our mothballed cloning technologies. But if we do elect to use this method, we'll be doing things at the pace of a megafauna, which is not an expedient one.
Infinitesimally low.
But not zero.
The chance of a starship landing on you as you sit here isn't zero, yet you still attended. Personally, my fear isn't mutation, but terramorphs developing a resistance. But that's something our group can continue to address if we decide to take this approach, as I believe we should.
This won't work without them.
Exactly right, ma'am. The Interstellar Affairs Office has already begun reaching out to worlds throughout the settled systems, informing them of the risks we're all facing, and that the UC has a plan to prevent what happened on New Atlantis from happening elsewhere. Thus far, the response has been overwhelmingly positive. The spirit of mutual cooperation displayed between the UC and the Freestar Collective in managing the terramorph data set a good tone for the work we're doing, Captain. We expect we'll hit some resistance, but our office has plenty of carrots and sticks to ensure the program's widespread success.
The responsibilities will be spread across multiple branches of the UC. Research and day-to-day administration will be handled by a new group under the Science Division. All diplomatic concerns and coordination will fall to Chief Yassine and Interstellar Affairs. But most of the actual on-the-ground work, that'll be handled by the Vanguard. Very well. Then did you have a preference on the method we should deploy?
I'm in full agreement. No need be delving into unpredictable sciences.
And Major Sinan? Dr. Walker, you'd find this acceptable?
We trust the captain's judgment.
Then the matter is settled. We'll begin the process immediately. Today marks day one for the United Colonies Terramorph Management Division, making you three the founding members of the TMD. As befits such a group, the Cabinet wanted to display its gratitude. Today, we will be adding 3 new Class 1 citizens to our ranks.
Class 1? For the 3 of us? Are you joking?
What he means to say is, thank you, ma'am.
Oh, yeah. Thank you, ma'am.
It's a status reserved only for those who've dedicated their lives to the United Colonies, or done great things for its cause. Class 1s enjoy an ample credit disbursement, an additional reduction on the cost of colonial goods. And I'm told the penthouse is rather impressive. You all have earned it. Now, there's much to be done. Major Sinan, Dr. Walker, I hope you two are willing to continue your efforts spearheading the TMD's research on Mars.
We'd be honored, ma'am.
And as a member of both the Vanguard and the TMD, I believe you, Captain, will have your pick of duties. Speak to your commander, Tuala, if I recall correctly. He should be able to provide you with assignments going forward, plus help you collect the benefits that come with being named Class 1. On behalf of the whole of the United Colonies, you have our sincerest gratitude. This meeting is adjourned.